to social change by members of 9 black sororities and fraternities known as the Divine Nine. Resolution 547, sponsored by Councilmember Carmen De La Rosa, would call on the School Construction Authority, or SCA, and the Department of Design and Construction, DDC, to reconsider their decision to substitute precast concrete wall panels in place of traditional handset brick and block walls on public projects in New York City. Resolution 579, sponsored by Councilmember Eric Dinowitz, would call on the Department of Education to ensure that the New York State Seal of Biliteracy is awarded in all New York City public high schools to eligible students. Resolution 580, also sponsored by Councilmember Dinowitz, would call on CUNY to ensure that all campuses award an appropriate number of college credits to students who earned a New York State Seal of Biliteracy in high school and, where required, accept that seal as fulfillment of any foreign language requirement. Resolution 742, sponsored by Councilmember Shauna Abreu, would call on the Department of Education to develop curriculum on machine learning and adopt their current curriculum and policies to account for the use of generative artificial intelligence. Department of Education to mandate training on generative artificial intelligence tools, including for potential classroom implementation for all educators. Resolution 766, sponsored by Councilmember Joseph, would call on the Department of Education to update its Computer Science for All initiative to increase access to CS for All professional development for educators and administrators, particularly for those in underserved schools, and to increase training for all teachers. Resolution 534, also sponsored by Councilmember Joseph, would call on the New York State Legislature to pass and the New York State Governor to sign A3723, S.759, and A816, S879, which would extend the hours of use for student Metro cards in New York City and would prohibit the MTA from promulgating rules that penalize a student for using a student Metro card when school is not in session. Resolution 345B, sponsored by Councilmember Pirina Sanchez, would call on the New York State Legislature to pass and the Governor to sign A1439S, S2721, in relation to establishing a New York State Office of Civil Representation to provide access to legal services in eviction proceedings. Resolution 499B, sponsored by Councilmember Shauna Abreu, would call on the New York State Legislature to pass and the Governor to sign A4993, S3254, requiring that any party eligible under local law for free legal counsel for an eviction proceeding may be granted an adjournment by the court for additional time to secure counsel. Resolution 165A, sponsored by Councilmember Farrah Lewis, would call on the state to enact legislation to authorize certain shelters for victims of domestic violence to be reimbursed for any payment differential for housing a single individual in a room intended for double occupancy. Today, we will also vote on the following pieces of legislation. Introduction 1184A, sponsored by Councilmember Chi Osei, would require the DCLA to provide additional details relating to zip code, community board, and council district in its annual report on the arts and cultural organizations that receive city funding. This report is submitted to the council and posted on the DCLA website, and I now invite Councilmember Osei to the podium to discuss his legislation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're voting on my bill, Intro 1184A, which requires DCLA again to report on their annual budget. I was particularly concerned about public reporting on the distribution of DCLA's CDF, or Cultural Development Fund grants, disaggregated by geographic area and characteristics of the organizations being funded. This bill would require DCLA's annual report to include the council district, zip code, and community board for each organization being funded. Since being heard, this bill was amended to require the commissioner to report demographic information pertaining to the communities served by department-funded arts and cultural organizations. Such information would include race/ethnicity, age, disability status, and sexual orientation if known to the department. Additionally, the commissioner would be required to report demographic information pertaining to the leaders of such organizations if disclosed to the department for purposes of the report. This report will bring more transparency transparency and insight into the CDF process, a grant that many of our cultural organizations rely on. By having more transparency through reporting, we will be more equipped to advocate for our cultural community and see how effective reforms are. I want to thank the cultural community for their advocacy on this legislation, which started before my time in the council. I especially want to thank Lucy Sexton and the community at Culture at 3 for helping us shape this legislation to what it is today. And thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you, Council Member. Introduction 198, sponsored by Councilmember Rafael Salamanca, would mandate the DOE to stock naloxone in all school buildings. Opioid-involved death rates have increased significantly since the beginning of the pandemic. According to the CDC, in 2019, nearly 1 in 7 students reported misusing prescription opioids. Extending the availability of naloxone to all DOE schools furthers existing efforts to address the opioid epidemic and saves lives. I invite Councilmember Salamanca to discuss his legislation.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am happy to be here today to discuss my bill, Intro 198, which will be voted on today. I want to first start by thanking Speaker Adams and my colleagues for the support they've shown throughout the years on getting to this moment today. Today's a significant win for the South Bronx community, a win over 6 years in the making. Intro 198 will require every school in New York City to carry naloxone kits. Inspired by a rise in teen drug deaths as well as an overdose from a teacher at a school in my district, passage of this bill now makes New York City the largest school district in the country to have such a preventive measure in place. I first introduced this bill in 2017, and now, following years of inaction, excuses, and roadblocks, our city's communities that have been most negatively impacted by fentanyl use will finally receive some reprieve. With the passage of Intro 198, we are mandating the Department of Education to take preventive steps against fentanyl overdoses that occur near educational institutions by keeping naloxone kits in every single school in our city. Our communities have been ravaged by the effects of fentanyl's introduction in our city. In my district, we have seen these consequences befall our most innocent, our children. For far too long, Bronx children have been forced to tiptoe their way into their schools because needles laced with fentanyl are carelessly thrown in sidewalks and green spaces surrounding their school entrances. For far too long, Bronx parents have had to fear whether one of these needles will harm their children, forcing them to become yet another statistic of our war against the opioid crisis. Now, thanks to the passage of Intro 198, we are ensuring preventive measures are in existence to protect our children, our teachers, and our parents. I would like to thank my city council colleagues for co-signing the importance and necessity of this bill. Facts are undisputed, and the fact of the matter is that the increase in availability of naloxone kits in our city schools as a result of passage Intro 198 will help save lives.
Thank you, Councilmember Salamanca. Introduction 417B, sponsored by Councilmember Lincoln Ressler, would consolidate the community board notice requirement for bike lanes with the notice process in place for major transportation projects, and would repeal the existing standalone process for bike lanes. This bill would also grant council members and community boards additional time during the summer to submit comments about a proposal to add or remove a bicycle lane. Finally, the bill would eliminate a 14-day waiting period for major transportation projects, and I now invite Councilmember Ressler to the podium to speak about his bill.
Firstly, just want to thank the Speaker for your leadership and for having my back on this one. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. And I also want to thank Chair Brooks Powers. Without her support and leadership, we wouldn't have been able to get this bill passed. Mark Chen, the committee counsel, especially Faisal Ali from the Speaker's team for their help. I'm an avid cyclist. I think I've taken 4,000 city bike trips at this point. There are 550,000 daily bicycle trips in New York City each and every day, but there would be a whole lot more if it was safer. This year, through the first 3 quarters of the year, we're on pace for the deadliest year on record for cycling in New York City, certainly in well over 2 decades. We can make it safer if we meet the goals of the streets master plan that the city council passed. But we're supposed to, the Department of Transportation is supposed to install 250 miles of new protected bike lanes by the end of 2025. We're nowhere near that goal. They've installed 35 lanes. They are a pittance. It's just a pittance of what we actually need. And this legislation will make a real difference. It will get rid of unnecessary bureaucracy that slows down the installation of protected bike lanes to finally make it safe for more New Yorkers to cycle around the city of New York. We have a waiting period after their public presentations that for months the Department of Transportation cannot move forward on projects that are embraced by our communities, that are supported, that are necessary, that would save lives. This legislation will end those unnecessary waiting periods. It still ensures that people have a voice, that there's real input and from our community boards, from our elected officials, but it streamlines the process and ensures that whether we're building a bike lane or a bus lane, it's one process, it's a crisp timeline, and we can get life-saving projects done. So I'm really excited to get this legislation passed and see more New Yorkers cycling each and every day. It is a climate-friendly way for us to get around, and it's a good day for cyclists in New York. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. Next, Introduction 1101A, sponsored by Councilmember Amanda Farias, would require the Chief Equity Officer to create an interactive and anti-racism training for employees of human services contractors. This training would be an annual requirement for all employees of human services contractors who deliver direct services to the public and their supervisors. Alternatively, a human services contractor would be able to develop and administer its own training as long as it meets the same legal standard. I invite Councilmember Farias to talk about the importance of her legislation.
Thank you, Speaker Adams. Anti-racism training is a crucial step for human service contractors in their commitment to promoting social justice, eliminating racial inequalities, and fostering a more inclusive and equitable society. The work we are accomplishing with my bill, Intro 1101, and within the Juneteenth legislative package will ensure our city's public service environments are welcoming and supportive for all clients, regardless of their racial and ethnic backgrounds. Human service professionals frequently engage with individuals from various racial and ethnic backgrounds, making it imperative to dismantle ingrained biases that may perpetuate discrimination, especially here in New York City. Anti-racism training is of paramount importance for human service contractors as it addresses systematic inequities and ensures a more just and inclusive provision of services. By fostering a deep understanding of the historical and structural aspects of racism, professionals can work towards dismantling discriminatory practices, advocating for equitable policies, and promoting culturally competent care. It goes beyond individual awareness to instigate systematic change, ensuring that services are not only free from prejudice, but actively contribute to dismantling racial disparities. Thank you to the advocates who supported this bill, and thank you to my esteemed colleague, Councilmember Natasha Williams, for her leadership on the important Juneteenth legislative package.
Thank you, Councilmember. Introduction 1118A, sponsored by Councilmember Natasha Williams, would require the Department of Citywide Administrative Services, in consultation with the Office of Racial Equity and the Commission on Human Rights, to create an interactive anti-racism and anti-racial discrimination training for city agency employees. City employees, including independent contractors, interns, and volunteers, would be required to complete such training annually. I invite Councilmember Williams to the podium to discuss her legislation.
Thank you, Speaker Adams, for your leadership. Good afternoon. Today, I'm really excited about two essential bills that I will be hopefully passing today. First, Intro 1118 that you heard proposes mandatory anti-racism training for city employees. And then, of course, Resolution 658 designating May 10th as National Panhellenic Council Day in New York City, recognizing the invaluable contributions of the Divine Nine. Also, a quick shout out to Councilmember Farias, who is also passing a bill today that is a part of our Juneteenth package of bills. I look forward to a swift passage of all the bills, but really excited that two of the bills will be passing today. Amending the New York City Charter for mandatory anti-racism training signifies a commitment to a future where diversity is indispensable. adding immeasurable value to our city. This comprehensive approach ensures inclusivity by extending anti-racism training to all in city agencies, reinforcing our united effort against workplace racism. The proposal incorporates robust accountability measures, actively embedding anti-racist principles throughout the organizational structure of our city. This law ensures inclusivity by extending this training to employees, interns, contractors, and volunteers. This will emphasize accountability and make sure that there is proper monitoring and enforcement at all levels. Together, these actions establish a unified front against workplace racism, actively ensuring that our city is just. Just really quickly about the Divine Nine. As a member of the Divine Nine, this is more than affiliation. It is a profound connection to a legacy of excellence and service. This day will celebrate the rich tapestry of excellence and impactful contributions woven by members like myself, Speaker Adams, I want to look at her, Amanda Farias, Councilmember Kevin Riley, and Councilmember Sylvina Brooks Powers. Our Black sororities and fraternities within the Divine Nine have made an indelible contribution across various realms, from education to politics to civil rights. This day is a celebration of our collective achievements and our ongoing commitment to unity, service, and positive change that defines the essence of the Divine Nine. Thank you.
Very divine, very, very divine. Thank you. Introduction 195, sponsored by Councilmember Carlina Rivera, would provide a mechanism for occupants of multiple dwelling buildings to report multiple dwelling buildings to report would allow tenants to call 311 to have HPD inspect the unoccupied unit and issue violations for hazardous or immediately hazardous conditions. HPD would also publish these violations on its website. I invite Councilmember Rivera to discuss her very important legislation.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. All right. Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, for your support and for your leadership. I'm Councilmember Carlina Rivera. I represent the vibrant communities of the East Side, and certainly a place where we've seen a lot of housing discrimination, displacement, pretty much ground zero for gentrification. Today, Council will vote on my bill, Intro 195. It's going to change the Housing Maintenance Code to ensure that landlords are keeping unoccupied units in good repair. It also creates a 311 reporting option for tenants to report issues in vacant units. That has not existed in the past. And it facilitates the inspection of problematic vacant apartments to keep them from being a source of potential danger to neighbors. And that is directly from tenants themselves who are going through these experiences. Reports of mold and leaks and rats and garbage, open doors and broken locks, and certainly not a condition that anyone feels safe in, let alone that makes you feel like you want to stay in that building. So why are landlords keeping units vacant during an unprecedented crisis? It seems landlords have been warehousing rent-stabilized units for a couple reasons. Some of it is in protest to legislation passed in Albany that limited vacancy bonuses and increased protections for vulnerable tenants. It might also be because accountability has been limited. At the moment, tenants cannot request inspection of unoccupied units, leaving many in a lurch and leaving tenants exposed to potentially dangerous conditions. This law will require HPD to contact owners when they have received those complaints. The owners then would have to schedule an inspection within 21 days. That inspection is guided by a checklist. Violations are then issued and published. If the owner or landlord tries to dismiss or evade these complaints, there is a legal mechanism for accountability to grant HPD inspection and get that access. There's no more excuses. We have to address bad conditions and bring as many homes online as possible. So this bill is significant because not only does it change the Housing Maintenance Code in a way that requires HPD to marshal resources toward the inspection of unoccupied units, but the data collected could help demonstrate patterns of warehousing and neglect. This bill will help address the symptoms of apartment warehousing and increase safety and security for residents. This is an issue of healthy homes, This legislation empowers HPD to guarantee that. It empowers the tenants to take action. So I want to thank all of the advocates, the attorneys, tenants, of course, my own team, Eddie Amador, the council staff for working diligently to get this done and across the finish line. Thank you.
Thank you. Good stuff. Thank you, council member. Next, we will vote on a package of legislation to address and curb noise pollution, a major issue that impacts the quality of life of residents across this city. Introduction 774A, sponsored by Majority Leader Keith Powers, would require DEP to measure sound levels within dwelling units on request when the sound is related to construction activities. DEP would be required to measure the sound level at any point within the unit with windows and doors that may affect the measurement closed. Introduction 775A, sponsored by Majority Leader Powers, would mandate DEP to publish the results of their noise inspections online within 5 business days after they have been completed. Introduction 776A, sponsored by Majority Leader Powers, would require DEP and the NYPD to give a copy of the report created after a 311 noise complaint to anyone who requests it and provide the 311 tracking number within 14 days after receiving the request. Introduction 770A, sponsored by Majority Leader Powers, would codify and expand DEP's noise camera program, which pairs decibel readers or other noise monitoring equipment with cameras capable of taking a series of photos, videos, or other recorded images to detect motor vehicles exceeding the noise limits under the city law. Subject to appropriation, DEP would be required to ensure there are no less than 5 noise cameras per borough and to consider input from elected officials and community boards in selecting noise camera locations. DEP will also be required to submit an annual report on the program to the mayor and the council and to post it online. Majority Leader Powers couldn't be here today, but we thank him for his work on these important bills. And Introduction 1194A, sponsored by Councilmember Jim Gennaro, would cap the compensation a citizen complainant can receive from a noise complaint at $5 or $10, depending on whether DEP or the citizen complainant prosecutes the proceeding. For citizen complaint proceedings commenced prior to the effective date of the bill, the maximum penalty would be capped at $50. This would reduce the financial incentive for serial complainants to file multiple harassing complaints against businesses for the purpose of collecting the award money. And I invite Councilmember Gennaro to say a few words about his bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity, and in keeping with the subject of the noise package, I'll try not to talk too much. That's noise pollution, so I'll try to be brief. But this has gotten some attention. It's got a lot of media coverage, and every time you do a bill, you're trying to fix a problem. So what problem are we trying to fix? So we got the city's noise code. City's noise code has got many, many provisions. 18 years ago, when I was chair of the same committee under Mayor Bloomberg, the mayor did a whole revision of the noise code from everything that you can imagine, and no one knew about the civilian complaint provisions. We just didn't know it was there. And so here's what happened. So one provision of the noise code is for so-called commercial noise. So you have a bar, a restaurant, or whatever. There's noise inside the establishment. Back 18 years ago, we created a standard where you would have to use a decibel meter in order to measure that, and that has worked. There is another section of the noise code that would deal with speakers facing outward from any kind of business that would try to bring business in. And so speakers saying, come in here and buy a necktie or whatever. Now that section of the code, I won't bother with the number, but that section of the code is subject to civilian enforcement. And so a civilian enforcer can go and, well, you can call 311. A lot of people say that's not good enough. Okay, so you have the right to do civilian enforcement of that. But what has happened is that many of the businesses that are being cited with violations are not violating the section of the code that deals with the speakers going outward. They're dealing with the section of the code for noise within a business that is leaking out. And so the bounty hunters, as we call them, have devised this little mechanism whereby they write thousands of violations, because there's first offense, second offense, third offense, and then like the fines increase. So the bounty hunters go around. You have 2 individuals that are responsible for like 6,000 violations in the past year or so. So what happens is they go out. They go out on Monday. They go out on Tuesday. They go out on Wednesday. First violation, second violation, third violation, fourth violation. They take a look at 8th violation. They give them all to DEP, which is completely overwhelmed by this volume, because DEP has the opportunity, once they get this violation, to act on it. DEP is overwhelmed, and they don't. So then it goes through OATH, the Office of Administrative, yeah, you got it, very good. So it goes to OATH. Everyone's trying to get me to talk less. I appreciate that. That's good for the planet. And so they go to OATH, and OATH is like overwhelmed with all these things. And the bounty hunters, when they send it to DEP, DEP takes a pass, and then it goes to OATH, and it goes to people who have gotten the violations. And so OATH and the people get the violation, they get them at the same time. But the bounty hunters can set the court date for like 9 months in the future, whatever. So a business owner gets an envelope full of stuff that's looks half official or whatever. They stick it on the desk. 9 months later, they don't show up. And so, but the bounty hunters show up and say, this was a speaker facing outward, used as some kind of attractant to bring, and if the person's not there to fight it, they get a judgment, and these judgments are a lot of money. It gets to be like $1,350. Half of $1,350 is a lot of money. So these bounty hunters have raked up hundreds of thousands of dollars in this unfair process that we had to figure out how to fix. And some of the violations, okay, they were for speakers that were facing outward. I get it, but 6 violations, 7 violations, and the business doesn't know about it. So here's what the bill does. It preserves the civilian enforcement tool for people to use for the right section of the code, but the bounty is only $5 if you give it to DEP and DEP acts on it. If DEP takes a pass and the Civic Association, Block Association, or whatever, takes it to OATH, then they get $10. So this takes away all the financial incentive to profiteer off this, but reserves the opportunity for people who want to protect their neighborhoods from noise that they don't want to hear, and that is not legal. That's the essence of what's going on. And so, but for those tickets that are in the pipeline that have not yet been adjudicated, those will be capped at $50. And so the bounty hunters will only be eligible to get 25 of that. So we had to deal with fixes going forward and fix those violations that are in the pipeline. Anyone wants to hear more about this, I'm here all day, okay? So thanks very much. I thank my colleagues for their indulgence. I thank Madam Speaker. And I'm going to get a violation for noise pollution right now. DEP's outside waiting to give it to me.
You only get $5 until the agency acts upon it.
He will be here all day. Thank you, council member. Finally, we will be voting on a comprehensive menstrual equity package that expands access to menstrual products in city facilities. From reproductive and maternal health to expanding economic opportunities, the council has championed policies that ensure that women and all New Yorkers have access to the resources and support needed to succeed. Today's menstrual equity legislation furthers our commitment to that goal, and I'm so proud that we're advancing it today. Introduction 1059A, sponsored by Councilmember Amanda Farias, would expand the definition of menstrual products to include menstrual cups. This bill would also require DCAS to include them in the provision of menstrual products to agencies, temporary shelters, and youth detention or congregate care facilities and DOC to provide all people in custody who menstruate with access to reusable or single-use menstrual cups. Introduction 1057A, sponsored by Councilmember Farias, would require DOC to produce an annual report specifying the amount of menstrual products ordered by the department, disaggregated by the product type, the amount of such product distributed to correctional facilities, and the number of products distributed to individuals in custody. Introduction 1058A, sponsored by Councilmember Farias, would require DOE to develop informational materials about menstrual products to be shared with every student in grades 4 through 12. This bill would also require DOE to submit an annual report regarding the distribution of such informational materials. I invite Councilmember Farias to the podium to discuss her bills.
I will not consider this more noise pollution. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Menstrual equity stands as a fundamental pillar of gender justice, particularly for women and gender-expansive individuals in the vibrant and diverse landscape of New York City. Access to menstrual hygiene products is not merely a matter of convenience for most. It is a matter of dignity, health, and equality. In a city that prides itself on progressiveness, it is crucial to recognize that menstrual equity is intrinsically tied to the broader issues of economic and social justice. Menstrual equity dismantles barriers that hinder educational and professional pursuits and fosters an environment where everyone can thrive regardless of their gender identity. The ability to manage menstruation with dignity and without financial burden is an essential aspect of ensuring equal opportunities for all individuals, irrespective of gender. In advocating for menstrual equity, we affirm our commitment to creating a city that prioritizes the well-being and equality of all its residents, recognizing that basic needs such as menstrual hygiene are integral to a truly inclusive and just society. I'm proud to be the prime sponsors of Intros 1057A, 1058A, 1059A. Additionally, a co-prime with Chair Caban on Intro 1055A and with Councilmember De La Rosa on 1056A. These bills are bringing this city forward for all people, and I'm super proud that they're being voted on today and of my colleagues. While I could speak for you for days about the importance of these bills, I want to take some time to specifically talk about the inclusion of menstrual cups in these pieces of legislation. For those of you that don't know what a menstrual cup looks like, this is what it looks like, and this is what a disposable one looks like. Menstrual cups offer a sustainable, cost-effective, and environmentally friendly alternative to, look at this, see?
Is it like a Diva cup?
It's not like a Diva cup. Well, yes, it is a Diva cup, actually. Sorry. An environmentally friendly alternative to traditional menstrual products. In the carceral system, where resources are often limited, providing access to menstrual cups empowers individuals to manage their menstrual health with autonomy and dignity. Same goes for our school system. You don't know how many times as young people, young women will be too scared to ask for a tampon, too scared to ask for a pad, if they are even in the bathroom where they're supposed to get them. This is something that can solve you for an entire day, an entire menstrual cycle day, to not have to worry about stains on chairs, on your clothing, or access to anything. This not only contributes to physical comfort, but also addresses the emotional and psychological aspects of menstruation, fostering a sense of respect for the bodily autonomy of incarcerated individuals. In essence, ensuring access to menstrual cups is a step towards recognizing and respecting the basic rights and humanity of those within the criminal justice system. Per Intro 1057, DOC will be providing disposable menstrual cups like this to inmates while they are incarcerated, and a reusable one like the one I'm presenting here upon discharge on request, offering a long-term and short-term solution for menstruators that saves them money and promotes sustainability. And per 1059, menstrual cups will be added to the current definition of menstrual products to expand what is available to New Yorkers when they are in New York City agencies, temporary shelters, and youth detention or congregate care facilities, reaffirming that New York City is the leading city in America for menstrual equity. Thank you all for entertaining me. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you so much, Council Member. Introduction 1056A, sponsored by Councilmember Carmen De La Rosa, would expand the age group of students to whom the Department of Education is mandated to provide menstrual products from beginning at grade 6 to beginning at grade 4. This legislation is very important to me. as it came to my attention via a fifth grader by the name of Sydney. So I'm going to call this one Sydney's Law. Sydney, this is for you. Councilmember De La Rosa.
Thank you. I want to thank our speaker for her leadership. This is a majority woman council, and I think that this is such an important package today. I also want to thank the chair of our Women's Caucus, Councilmember Amanda Farias, and Councilmember Farrah Lewis, and the chair of our Women and Gender Equity Committee. This is personal to me. I also, like Sydney, have a 9-year-old daughter who is a student at a public school. She is a 4th grader. She can begin her cycle at any moment, and it is important for us to, one, change the taboo that talking about our periods is something that shouldn't happen. When we are charged with the care of our children in public schools, they should not only have access to ask the questions that they need to ask in order to understand their own bodies, but also access to the materials that they need in order to go about their day and continue their education like any other child. When we think about the state of our public schools and we think about communities like mine in Upper Manhattan, where are communities of need, oftentimes, their first encounter with the health system happens within a school. And so I am so proud of my introduction, Intro 1056A, which is part of this larger package. People with periods can attest that their first experience in getting their period, possibly having difficulty knowing who to turn to, who to ask for help, and how to navigate the situation. The experience often comes with shame, confusion, and we do not have to continue the status quo. So today, I am proud of this package. I'm proud to join my colleagues, and for me, this is a celebration of what this council can accomplish together. Thank you so much, and thank you to our speaker.
Thank you so much, Council Member. And Introduction 1055A, sponsored by Council Member Tiffany Caban, would require all materials generated by the city to use the gender-inclusive terminology menstrual product rather than the phrase feminine hygiene product when referring to products such as menstrual cups, tampons, and menstrual pads. This legislation would also require DOE to report on the provision of menstrual products in schools. I invite Council Member Caban to the podium to talk about her legislation.
Thank you. These lights are intense, y'all. Ooh, hot. I also appreciated the show and tell. We should do that more often. Good afternoon, y'all. I'm proud today to be passing this landmark menstrual equity package, not just as the chair of the Committee on Women and Gender Equity, which earlier today voted to advance these bills to the full council, but additionally as the author of Intro 1055A, one of the bills in the package. 1055A will help our city be more responsive to the needs of students who menstruate, and will rid our city's documents and materials of sexist and queerphobic euphemisms to describe menstrual cups, tampons, and pads in favor of clear, inclusive language. I want to shout out my colleagues who authored the other pieces of legislation in this package, Councilmember De La Rosa, Farias, and Lewis. Of course, today's package would not be possible without the diligent efforts of Speaker Adams and her team, those of our committee counsel, Sahar Mozami, and senior legislative policy analyst, Christy Dwyer, or those of Period Law and the other advocates, organizations, and everyday New Yorkers who pushed for this legislation. Lastly, I, of course, want to extend my heartfelt gratitude and congratulations to my own staff, especially our legislative director, Madhuri Shukla, and everyone who menstruates deserves the resources and education necessary to manage their periods with peace of mind and maximal bodily comfort. Our combined efforts will make the city safer, healthier, and more just for every New Yorker who menstruates. So thank you.
Period. End of story. I try. This does include our stated agenda, but I do want to acknowledge our council member-elect members who are here today with us. Councilmember-elect Salam, Councilmember-elect Banks, Councilmember-elect Marmorato, and Councilmember-elect Zhuang. Welcome. With that, we'll take on-topic questions first.
Are these still being offered in schools? Like, how do you make sure? Because I've asked teachers question is, how is there, especially in schools and in jails, like how is there an accounting of how many you need? Do you have enough? Is it enough for everyone?
I love the question, and happy belated birthday, fellow Sagittarian. You know, Katie, and that's something that we're going to have to bring. You know, we're bringing this great legislation today that will be passed about equity, but we are going to have some oversight on a lot of things concerning menstrual equity, including, you know, the amount of product, who's getting the product, where it's going, and quite frankly, I have a problem with children paying. That's just my own personal thing, because that came along with Sydney's information also, is that, you know, a quarter here, a quarter there, whatever it is, you know, for kids isn't really cool. So we're going to have to do our due diligence in oversight of that question.
So upon, we had a great hearing. Yeah, we had a great hearing on it that kind of touched on some of these topics. We do need to be better at following up with ensuring that the machines within the bathrooms right now, they pick and choose which ones they fill and which ones they don't. So for the non-gendered bathrooms, they actually do not have any product, except they're only within the female-oriented or determined bathrooms in the schools. And so that's something that we have pushed on. I made it very clear during the hearing, like I have gone into several, if not almost all of my schools, and I purposely go into the women's bathroom. I purposely see if I can turn the knob, and if anything comes out, and there have not been any. That seemed to alarm them in the hearing, and they were unsure of why they were not seeing that throughout. It still seems as if within our schools, students have to go to the nurse or to a designating teacher that has the product, and that is a problem. As the speaker stated, we have to do a lot of more oversight to ensure.
And to briefly add to that, I think, one, it wasn't a surprise that we were told that, oh, they're available in all the bathrooms, and every single female council member that participated in the hearing was like, well, I check the bathrooms, because of course we do, and they're not in any of them. But I wanted to touch on the DOC aspect. Something that we asked about was that they're supposed to be, you know, offering on intake folks who menstruate or getting 2 tampons, but after that, there's actually no guarantee, even though they're supposed to get them whenever, on demand, whenever they want, and that wasn't the case. And to make it even worse, we found out that you know, tampons were available through commissary, but they were charging almost double of what you would find it in like your local Walgreens or CVS, and then you couple that with the fact that a person is making pennies on the hour in labor, and so you might have somebody that has to work 15, 16, 17 hours just to be able to purchase a box of tampons at commissary, something that should be free and readily available, and that's like something that needs to be addressed, and this legislation takes steps towards that.
Yeah, and just to a little bit more on that, right now the system that they have in terms of aggregating and where they place them, they choose when they openly place them, and it's basically like the warehouse orders, and after that number of quantity, it's a question mark of how much is still there, how much is disseminated per facility, even how much folks are taking to use for themselves, which is why the bill specifically has certain areas where we want to get numbers of, but we do not want to change the open call system of anybody being able to go up and grab several pads or several tampons based off of their menstruation. This is solely trying to determine what goes from the main hub base of what they're ordering versus what gets disseminated out per facility, and then they let us know usage based off of per facility and what gets disseminated out. So, thank you.
Awesome.
Oh, Ethan! Come on, Ethan, I just closed my book and everything.
Well, you'll love this one.
Okay. What you got?
So the mayor is headed to DC.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
Is he allowed out of the state?
On topic.
Greg just reported that he does not have a planned meeting with White House officials. You know, he says he's going for the migrant crisis again. I mean, what do you think about that? He's been down there like many times at this point. Is beating the drum with the feds doing anything?
I'll just answer the question this way, Ethan. I'm not there, for his meetings. I was there for my own a couple of months ago, but I can only hope that conversations will be had around the dollars that New York City so desperately needs to help us out with the migrant crisis. I hope that our federal partners are listening to the mayor, if that is indeed the topic, which is my hope. Because New York City, once again, as everyone continues to say,